Yerishaturian's translation. Աստված անստեղծ անժամանակ հայրանս կիսպ ու անքանակ Բորտմունձնության ես ու բաջար ու սուրբոթմուն պխման անջար Քեզ գաչենք երգայնամիտ ամեն ողոր մուջշմարիտ Այստեղծվածիտ կտասիրով որ հույսը վրատ ննչեց անխրով The baptized person comes out of the water. There is another set of hymn and prayers and readings. But again, when it comes to editing, that is one that you could edit out because it could and go directly into the chrismation. Okay? And that starts with the singing of Achbür Genats, which is a song of Pentecost, a hymn of Pentecost. And actually, our fathers have described theologically now, and this is very sound and very correct, baptism as our personal Easter. That is, going into the water 3 times is like going into the grave, into the tomb with Jesus 3 times, 3 days, and then coming out with new life and then receiving the Holy Spirit like the apostles received in the upper room. Mm-hmm. So baptism as personal Easter and chrismation as personal Pentecost for each one of us. Now, so you start with Achbür Genats and then a prayer. Now, again, here, there is a second hymn. You could skip that and go directly into anointing.
What's the second hymn?
Vor Harachakuin.
34. Yeah. Out of order. It's missing stuff. That doesn't even have Achbür Genats. There are this Antelias Mashlos doesn't have Achbür Genats, by the way.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I'm going to comment on that. I commented quite a bit, but I'm going to comment on that towards the end and bring it all together. So, baptism starts with the foreheads, eyes, ears, nose, mouth, hands, heart, back, and feet. And then you give the blessing, and the baptized person goes inside to be dressed if the person is an adult, or the godparents would dress usually in a white cloth. You know, that's a symbol of purity, and he has been purified now as a person through baptism sacramentally. And here, now, this is Yev Abbas Getsutsane Hantet Spidag Yev Nor Nir Yev Gabez Naroden, and ties the Narod. And while he is tying that, at Yevda Yergus Zergus Varial Momeren Sitzern, and 2 candles. Okay, it's now the light of Christ in which he was baptized, and 2 people. Again, you know, you could use your judgment. Who should hold? Parents, I have seen it done. A couple of young cousins, you know, young enough to hold a candle without posing a great danger, and so on. Whoever, 2 individuals to hold candles on the ends of the line, and you start singing now, Astված խոսեցավ իբարձանց. Okay? And while you're singing, you tie the narod. Okay? And the word there of the second verse is very important, very significant to remember. Nor Israel gochetzak I Christos. We are called the new Israel in Christ. What does that mean?
In Christ, you are all the chosen people of God.
Perfect. We are the chosen people of God. We are the new Israel. And I have explained this once only, once. Apparently, in the family, there was a very anti-Semite person. He objected to me calling us the new Israel. You mean to say I'm Jewish? I said, no, you're not Jewish, but we're the new Israel. We are the chosen people of God. He just could not agree with that. He just couldn't accept it. It wasn't my problem. I wasn't going to change him. I let him go. But
Israel pari hai.
I
So yes, we call that day nor Job, nor Israel, nor Jovut.
yeah. Yeah. And then, at that time, again, there is a prayer you could read or skip, but right after that, you could now proceed to the altar with Meditz Arachi Serano Asluzo Arasvaz. Does that sound familiar to you from the Badarak?
Which part?
Yeah.
It's
When you're going up on the altar, is the similarities now of this service with the Badarak?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. See? Okay. And then there is the adoration at the altar. So the priest now takes the child and in front of the altar, okay, and makes the adoration 3 times, worshiping the altar and the baptismal font, and turning, yeah.
How about if they're an adult?
Just stand next to you and do, yeah,
Yeah. Walk around the altar.
without carrying. Same thing, the idea. There are some there. That's what, Right. right. But yet it yeah. I personally took if the baptized person is an adult, I took him or her up on the altar with me. There is another tradition there that is not in the book, but some people do it, some people don't. That is the procession of the angels. After that adoration, turn around the altar and then come down. So it's up to you. You could do that if you want to. And then here it says, you give communion. Again, a prayer. That's, again, mostly not done, but it's optional. And you can conclude it there. Yevdan oranzayn ikirgis kahanayn yevkahanayn kachi tserin unelo sargavak sup kachivas, and we bless them. It is here that Hampurin is nor magardialan. They kiss, they embrace the newly baptized. I have not particularly studied, but when my children were baptized, we did it in the course of the Badarak. It is at that time we did this exactly just like ordination would be, just before Vochjun. And everything finished. At this moment, the priest, the deacon called Vochjun Duk Minyans, baptism is over, the child is with the godfather, and the godfather stood right in the middle of the chancel, and we got Vochjun from the newly baptized, newly anointed child. The way at ordination, we would receive Vochjun from the newly ordained priest. That is something that we have to consider. I think it's going to be an uphill battle, but the day will come when we're going to reinstitute baptism and wedding into the Badarak the way it is originally supposed to be. Yeah.
I can see that happening in small parishes. In cathedrals with 500 people, with like 5 weddings or 4 weddings every Saturday, Friday. I don't see that happening.
Under present circumstances, not, because in Los Angeles area, as well as in some Middle Eastern parishes or dioceses, we have commercialized the sacraments. That's what it is. It's the same thing in Istanbul. On any Sunday in one church, there is 5, 6 weddings, and they rush. Okay, come on, you don't have time. Come on, move. I've seen it done in Glendale. I've seen it done in other parishes. You may be right, but there is a solution. The solution is, no matter what, you can arrange such that the Badarak will not be, or the sacrament will not be treated as a commercial enterprise. And if we can overcome that, a lot of problems will be eliminated. But I agree with you. Under present circumstances, the way it is, it's impossible. But we have to change our own attitude and our own commercialization. We are forced to commercialize because the person, if you say, no, I can't do it that day because I can only do 2 weddings per Sunday, and I already have 2, and I could only squeeze a 3rd one, and there's that possibility I can take the chance of another one. And you know what do we try to accommodate for? Because the person would say, okay, you can't do it, I'll go to somebody else. Commercialization. Okay? We have to be very conscious, and I'm very, very sad, and sometimes I'm disturbed that we have become a consumer-oriented church. That is, whatever the consumer wants, that's what we want to provide, especially when it comes to the sacraments. We have to change that. And for that now, again, we have competing dioceses. We have the Western Prelacy, we have the Eastern Prelacy. If the Eastern Prelacy, does something, and the Eastern Diocese does something, Eastern Prelacy is going to remain where it is, and things are going to change. We have to agree, all of us, Eastern Diocese, Western Diocese, Eastern Prelacy, Western Prelacy, all coordinated for the interest of the church, for the interest of the faith, for the sake of the sacrament, not to do these things, or to do them in a right way. And when we do that, there is only one big benefit, and that's going to be the faith, it's going to be the gospel, and eventually it's going to be the institution of the church. The way it is right now, nobody gains. Church loses. The only gain that there is money, commercialization. That's the danger. That's my opinion.
Hierarchy order. or Eurochorne. Մենք գնենք, եթե բսակ լինենա, մենք գնենք
John
երեկոյան ժամերտեն հետ։
Այո.
Այո.
Yeah.
In other words, you don't do bsag եւ այլն on Sunday.
We're not
I think
supposed to.
apparently even you don't do it on Saturday night because it is already Sunday.
Sunday, yeah. Yeah. And of course, if you look at the old calendars, it will show the days in the year liturgical calendar when weddings are allowed and weddings are not allowed. And if you really go by that now, half the year we're not supposed to do weddings. But, and Lent is one of them, very obviously. But I have seen some bishops given an exception. Go ahead, yeah, it doesn't matter. We have to be careful. You know what? There are so many issues like this and similar. We are accommodating commercial interests in all of this, or unimportant, unnecessary interests that we could change if we wanted to. But at this point, I can only point out and pray that someday it will be accomplished. Yes.
Հայաստանի համար բսակի ակիլված օդ չկա։ Իլգայության բսակ։
Yeah.
Ինչու, որտեղ հազիվ եկեղեցի գտերենք որ։
Yeah.
Ասանք ամենից վիզենք չկնար այսօր ունել, ուրիշ օր ունել, գերտան բերության կով դարձանակրդի and have civil wedding.
So if you don't do it, then someone else will do it.
So, Hima, the baptism, I mean, for all intents and purposes, 3 sacraments have already been accomplished: baptism, chrismation, and communion. If it is in the course of the Badarak, the communion could be with the Badarak, which is what we did when both my children were baptized. I set it up together. We did it in the course of the Badarak, and it was just like that. Walking from the newly baptized child, everybody, and then when the communion moment came, the godfather took the baby up front. Baby was communed, and then all the rest of us. So it was not like a separate service, and it really did not extend the time that much either. Probably the whole thing was another 10, 15 minutes. Not much than that. Okay? Now, as far as the baptismal process is concerned, in the Mashtos, there are a couple of things that are now out of use for reasons obviously. There is service or a special prayer to return the child to the mother. What for? The mother is there. What do you mean, return? In the old days, women were not allowed to attend baptism. The mother was not allowed to attend baptism. There were a couple of reasons for that. Number one, the childbirth was physically very tiring, so the mother was in rest. And second, she stayed at home and the rest of them came. But Datevatsi gives a reason, and again, this is something that is an explanation that is not theological so much, but sociological. Says, well, just as men are not allowed to be present at childbirth when only women are present. Therefore, at the birth, from the font, women are not allowed, like countering that. Well, now none of that is really applicable. Now, men go to the delivery room and even help with the delivery. I did. And many other priests and lay people I know did or do. That's number one. But these are not theological or biblical reasons. They're, again, social reasons, socially dictated reasons. What?
He thought you went into the room with, like, as a priest. I'm like, no, his own children. He was there for his own children.
Yeah, my own children. No, I don't go to parishioners' births. No. Is that what you thought, that I go to someone else's?
Like,
No,
wait.
no, to my own children.
Do that.
My own children. Okay, but again, they took it to the mother of the child at home, and in Jerusalem, and probably in the old times in the villages where there was an exclusively Armenian village. You would walk in the streets, and it wasn't too far of a distance anyway. Probably it was a block or two. They just walked there and delivered the baby, and there was a service. And then there was another service. 8 days later, they brought the baby, just like we have Utorek after the Feast of Nativity, and there was the Mirone Hanel. Okay. They used to wash, and there's a service about that. They used to wash the baby, clean all the miron, and pour the water, not in the sewer system, but under a tree in the garden, so that it will not be. Those are, pious expressions of respect for the item, for what we're dealing with. And then there is karasung, the most misunderstood, in the case of baptism, the most misunderstood service. It says, իսկ հետ 40 avուրց քանի թուրն եկեղեցվում եւ մայրն 40 ձուներ գրտնե եւ առնուս դղային իքիրգս եւ քահանային ասե. So it's the mother. This service actually, in other traditions, in the Assyrian tradition, for example, is called the churching of the mother. Because the mother was recovering from childbirth and had not been in church all that time, comes back with the child and is received back into the church with a special service and a special prayer and communion. All of that now is impractical under our present circumstances. But there are some societies, like I know people come from Armenia, Karasun Kispidaning. As soon as the baby is born, before they talk about baptism, Karasun Kispidaning. And they insist on that. Baptized, and then we will do it. No, Menget Peschengani. Okay. Karasun Kispidanis. And now there are prayers there. You have to change the prayer in order to accommodate the reversal of the order. We're taking the baby out of Karasun before the baby goes into Karasun. See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So, however, with the in the new mashtots that we're working on now, there is a prayer, a special prayer in the my mashtots about just one prayer about the karasung of the baby. No, not the karasung. Yeah, karasung of the baby. That has no reference to baptism, to chrismation, whatever. just receiving the mother back. Whenever it happens, you can read that prayer. So we'll see how it comes out. Yes.
Arasut is supposed to be 40 days after the baptism,
Mhm.
not when they're born.
No.
That's what I asked 160. It's technically wrong. But they do a Karasuk after.
Yeah.
Now, Karasun,
Karasun prosesi yani.
Supposed to do it baptism.
Oh,
at 40
Maman.
days after baptism.
Хок, знаете, чем ничем Карасунор днескам, нахеду ка маман туспидика.
Եվադեսն են հայաստանցիները։
Ոչ, երեք օր հետո կուքա հիմա. You see, one of the things that has changed, the Karasun churching of the mother is not for the child, it's for the mother. That the mother was at home, after delivering the baby and so on. So therefore, she came to church and she was sort of, this has some, to me, unacceptable terminology or misleading terminology, would be received back into the church after being cleansed of the uncleanlinesses of childbirth. These are old social mentalities that do not hold water in our present circumstances.
Is because of the blood.
Yes, yeah.
Because of the blood.
Yeah. So she is received. Now, however, a lot of things have changed. First of all, hardly any child is delivered at home. Number one. Second, medical profession has advanced so much that after childbirth, 3 days, 4 days, a week later, mother and child are out. In those days, they did stay at home. The baby was baptized within 8 days, supposedly, as the book says, within 8 days, because Jesus was, followed that Jewish tradition, being circumcised within 8 days. So these are changeable, adaptable, adjustable traditions. Okay, and that's what happens. We just have to re-guide it into a meaningful meaningful action, and increase the consciousness. Not do it blindly. Okay, everybody does it. Okay, Karasun Hispitihaning. And no matter how many times I try to explain that's not what we do, it doesn't matter.
Spaseng Karasun.
Che. Yere goredo, chorsoredo. Karasun can be there. The terminology remained, but not the Karasun also. Now, we go into Basar, wedding, or matrimony. What we have in the Mashtots is a totally, time-wise, a complete change of circumstances. Here it says they first go to the groom's house. One priest goes to the groom's house, blesses the groom's outfit, alavoshnek. The other priest goes to the bride's house, blesses the bride's wedding gown, and then with procession, they come wherever. One lives here, one lives there, the church is here. They come and they go to church together and do the wedding. matrimonial service. I remember in Beirut in my childhood, somehow they kept that, but not exactly, because there were some non-Armenian families in the neighborhood. They were mostly Christian, but it doesn't matter. But the halavoshnik wasn't there. The families started singing and going towards the church. The other family came in. When they both arrived at the street where the church is, they just joined. Harsupesa got arm in arm, and they proceeded together to the church. The priest is waiting for them at the door of the church. They go inside, they do the wedding, and they go. Now, all of that is gone. Okay? Halavoshnik chiga. In some places, they have a substitute halavoshnik. In Istanbul, at least they used to, 50 or so years ago, they would come to church. Before proceeding to the altar, in the narthex of the church, the bride takes her ternos, the glove, white glove, puts it on the table, and the groom gives his handkerchief, and they bless it. Symbolically, they are blessing their halav, their dress. And then they go into the church for the wedding service. It's like giving a semblance of what the book says, but not exactly. If the circumstances had changed, you're not going to do it, don't do it. It really is not going to make a difference under present circumstances to bless or not to bless the outfits. It's going to make no difference. The important thing is that they're going to come together. They're going to get married in the church. They do it knowingly and consciously. In the Ma'ir Mashros, there are instructions. And I've mentioned to you a couple of times the book Tzub Kahanait. Okay? In there are detailed instructions that the priests should meet with the bride separately, the groom separately, ask very important canonical questions. Are they getting into the marriage by their own voluntary decisions, or are they forced into it by their parents? It's a very important question. A century ago, that was more common than it is now, but even now, it is not impossible. There are circumstances where the parents pressure their children to get married for whatever reason, and the children necessarily are not embracing that decision wholeheartedly, and within a short time, the marriage dissolves. We have to be careful with that. The important thing is now, and you have to consider this, the wedding service is going to take place. We talked a little bit about commercialization. We have to be very, very careful. In Beirut, I used to remember, okay, you want first grade wedding, second grade wedding, or third grade wedding? If first grade wedding, all the lights go on. Second grade wedding, the center chandelier is lighted up, the others don't go up. It's all about money. We talk about commercialization. The same thing in Istanbul. Money, 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 money talks. We have to, and I know, I served in Fresno, and I know what happens in Los Angeles. The commercialization in Los Angeles is as bad as it used to be in the Middle East. 10 minutes, come on, go in. They in one church I know, they allowed only 10 photos. Get out, because the next wedding is coming in. We got to really start thinking. That kind of behavior neither sanctifies the moment nor appeals to the faith of the people. And if they don't have faith, wake them up to the faith. We have to consider all of these things and take the commercialization out in any shape or form. I'm totally opposed to it. Okay?
Like,
Yes.
how about like when a bride is actually pregnant during wedding? Wedding is not supposed to happen, right? But there are some Behars that actually go through and still do the wedding.
In our circumstances in America, there are so many situations like that.
In here, yeah, obviously.
If they are in the Middle East, it's probably because I am sure there are in the Middle East as well as in Armenia, but they go to church for the wedding ceremony before the pregnancy is visible from outside. You know what I mean? Before. Here is the thing. In human life, there are human circumstances. There are human conditions. Whether we like it or not, people make mistakes. We have to be a little more understanding, more pastoral. If you refuse, what's going to happen?
Can like wait until like she delivers and then get married?
What's the difference?
Well, I read in the book that when that happened, that means if it's a boy, he's getting married to his mom, and if it's a girl,
No.
getting
No.
married.
Those are myths. No, like Hayastansis have a myth. They won't get married in May. Hayastansiler Mayıs'ın çen amuslanır.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, Mayıs'ın çen amuslanır.
True.
I have no idea.
Ամբողջ գարունը չեն ամուսնանում։
Կենթանիները գամուսան։
Ամբողջ կարունը։
Oh, is that
Ամբողջ գարուն ամսվա ընթացքում մարտ, ապրիլ, մայիսին չեն ամուսնանում։
it's mating season for animals, for cattle, probably.
Pakistan's foods are crazy.
So that's not true.
Հայաստանցի ամուսնանում է հոկտեմբեր, սեպտեմբեր, նոյեմբերին։
Yeah,
Armenian, I see.
but from the perspective of the church, as long as the wedding date is not against the allowable dates, which now even is irrelevant because we're doing it almost any time, and we just have to be a little more conscious of this. At this point, I would not insist in our present circumstances on disallowing weddings except during Lent. I wouldn't do that, even though that has happened also. It has happened with bishop's permission. However, what I would insist upon is that anyone who is going to get married go to a mandatory premarital counseling. There are various programs specifically designed by church people who really now come and sit down. You can explain. You will be trained, by the way. Most of these programs that I'm saying are presented in a training. I have gone to a few of them. And you administer the preparation, the pre-Cana counseling, okay? And you will be surprised how much awareness it creates in the couple. I've seen it. the thing that you have to also realize and emphasize is this. If, let's say, the test result comes back and it recommends that you be a little more careful, suggest that they postpone, suggest that there are a few issues that need to be dealt with before they make commitment, you don't impose that and you don't refuse. You bring it to their attention, let them make that decision. That way, you're not assuming any responsibility.
But if it's feasible, you can choose not to do the wedding.
I did that too. There was a case that I said, I see too many problems here. And I said, look, I wouldn't say don't get married, but I see this problem. I wouldn't be the one to do it. If you have another priest, or you want me to see if there's another priest who wants to do it, here's the church, I welcome them. But I do not feel comfortable in my conscience to go ahead and do it, knowing that there are these obstacles. And we have not really cleared these obstacles. Those are situations, though, again, that in our present church circumstances are dangerous. Because in a couple of instances, they went to the bishop. And the bishop agreed with them. And I was put on the spot, and the bishop said, no, you got to do it. In my opinion, the bishop should support the priest. He doesn't know the inner circumstances, the priest does. But in the case of a wedding, it's a pastoral situation. The pastor sees something that the bishop doesn't, no matter who it is. No matter who it is, it must be. There are a couple of, again, social issues like that. The wedding ceremony, you're going to see, it's very, very simple, but very uplifting. And once again, the service itself is very much structured with Jashujam, the beginning, Jashujam, Tersvaznera, Avedarana, Pavadamka, Karoza, exactly the same order, the same way. The way the deacon's ordination is. And then it goes into the Badarak. But why don't we do it? Because 2.5 hours, the people are going to sit in church. If we had an abbreviated or an edited Badarak, a couple of times I did it at my own wedding. I did it at my children's wedding. At the end, I just put the communion distribution part. And everybody was invited to receive communion. I communed the bride and groom, the bridal party, the parents, and then everybody else in the congregation who wanted to come forward. We communed. And it was beautiful. I offered it to others. Whenever I sit down with counseling, I make that offer available. And quite a few took up on it. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. So, but we have to be conscious of these things. Historically, the wedding service is supposed to be with Badarak anyway. Okay? And baptism too, yes.
I was going to say, yeah, communion is part of the song.
Yes.
So what do you mean you had to ask them if they want it or not? What did you mean by that?
For everyone.
What do I mean, want it or not? I didn't say want it or not.
You said you offered it to them. And
Yeah.
quite a few of them wanted it.
Wanted it, yeah. The others
And I thought
didn't.
it's part of the song.
I think he's talking about the shortened
There is no
Badarak.
choice. You have to take communion part in your wedding. Part of the whole
Not
sacrament.
at the wedding, but if they didn't want distribution of communion as part of the wedding service, then I would say, the Sunday before, come to church, receive communion, confession, and so on.
Well, my question is, isn't it part of the wedding service?
No, not as it is now. It's not. The way we're doing it now, it's not. The way we should do it, it should be. Yes, it is.
Because in our cathedral, they do communion. In Armenia, they do communion. I've seen it.
They give communion to the bride and groom in the wedding service. I'm glad they do it, but I don't know in what context.
Նախ բոլոր խորհուրդները պետք է բادرակի ընթացքին։
Այո,
Եվ հիմա չեն կնել։ Անոր համար գա communion։
այո,
Բادرակի ընթացքին խորհուրդը գլա եւ բادرակի վահը կա, այդ ժամանակ գտնվենան
yeah.
եւ գահաղորդեն։
Yeah.
In other words, all sacraments are performed during the sacrament of the sacraments, which is badarak.
Now, in the wedding liturgy, there are a couple of things. There is the service, there's the blessing of wine in Cana of Galilee. That actually, if you really look at it, it is supposed to be at the wedding reception when they sit around the table. It's blessed. Not besagi ararochun or besagi chorhurt, but harsanegan untunelutun.
That's when they drink wine by the Quran. Now that's what they do.
Not Quran, I'm talking about, this is what we do now at the Quran.
Okay, that's what I saw, not communion then. Then it's probably just
Yeah,
wine.
probably that's what you saw. Yeah.
Որոնք ուտակասեր գործնենք նախ քինին
Kinin.
հետո
Դեղե գդալ պերի, հարս ու պեսա, գնկահայր, գնկամայր, երբեմն գանցարն ուրիշն գնկամայր, ես անոնց կուդամ միայն. Yeah, yes, միայն անոնց կուդամ. But in other places, Bolis, եւ այլն, բոլորին գանցին են, ամբողջ, yeah. Cousinները, մազնները, բոլորը գարնեն.
ժամանակ բուտուլը պետք է օգնենք
Please. Or just all the alcohol out the way.
Կանոն բսակ վերացուցանելով, which was a separate service that they came later, they went home and they came later, a few days later, to take the crowns off. Now it's taken off immediately afterwards. As far as the wedding crowns, narod is concerned, wedding narod, there are two traditions. One is the Byzantine tradition, which is the real, tiara, or the Armenian tradition, which is the strings red, white, and green with a cross. Okay, that's the narod. And the symbolism there is white is for purity, red is for sacrifice, green is for life. Okay? In the counseling sessions, we discussed the service. One of the sessions is the service. I explain all this, and you will be surprised. Many choose the string rather than the tiara, which is more showy. Okay, and for the cameras and for everybody to really wear a crown that looks like a crown. But when you explain the symbolism of the strings, they go, yeah, that's great. Let's do that. I know one priest, at least, who was in a small parish, maybe 2-3 weddings a year. He made a special crown for every couple he married, and he gifted to them afterwards, which is a good idea. It's a good idea. Just like the baptismal knowledge they take home, you can do that as well. So,
Keep that in mind.
yeah, so consider all these. Now, in the,
Այդ քրաունը գտնեն, որտեղ նաև որ երկենք ով դրտած մեծ տակավոր եւ Աշխեն մեծ տակուհի։
there is no դրտատ մեծ տակավոր,
Չկա։ Մենք այդպես երկենք։
մենք կփոխենք որ,
Բավա ինչ է։
հիմա քեզ գսեմ,
So I'm saying the crowns are because we are mentioning the kings and queens. And they are considered the king and the queen of the day. That's why they are seated. And when they are seated, they have to be standing up.
ով ապկար մեծ տակավոր, ապկար, եդո երկրորդ դունը ով դրտատ մեծ տակավոր, եւ
Աշխեն մեծ տակուհի, չէ՞։
ապկար, աշխեն չի գա, ավեցված է հետո, երորդ դունն ալ ապկար է, հետո ասվածազդուդը գա, որ չենք երկեր, արդեն մեկ դուն երկեն anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
There was no
How
room.
much time did they have back then? It was sing all day, all these services.
You know, in the Houston
Totally
church, you could
different
think
life.
all day, because it's like.
rather than look at it that way, the way we have to look at it, in my opinion, at all these things is this. There is an indispensable, essential elements in every sacrament that we have to identify and say, these have to be in the service. There are some other parts that you could use as optional. There are parts that you definitely have to drop because they are irrelevant now. So you have to look at those categories. The most important is use the sacraments to create awareness with the people, among the people, to nurture the faith. Okay? If we can succeed in doing that, the way we're doing things now, we're turning them off. You know, that commercial approach to sacraments turns many young people off. They do it because, somebody is going to do it, but it turns them off. So anyway, now,
Can I question, if I may?
yeah,
What about a situation when, let's say, a husband or a wife are true Christians and they want to do everything by the book? However, the spouse is non-Christian. They don't believe in Christ. Can the marriage be done in those situations?
in America, those situations are more common. In the old country, it was not an issue. Now it's becoming an issue over there too. In the Middle East now, many Armenians are marrying not just ethnically outside of the church, like an Armenian marrying a non-Armenian Christian. That's a different situation. There are many situations where they're marrying non-Christians, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists. All of this is happening. In that case, Jewish, I have faced that quite a few times.
Yeah.
We have to consider this. The sacrament, as we have, and the sacramental theology does not allow us to administer the sacrament to a non-Christian, whether the person is a non-believer or a non-Christian, another religion. However, we should consider, and this is where I consider pastoral presence. Many times I had to explain, I cannot do the sacrament, but I can be present. I will offer a prayer. Usually they welcome. Many, especially brides, say, oh, I have been dreaming all my life to have that crown put in. I'm sorry. You dreamed it, but your dream does not materialize fully. I cannot do that if you're marrying. In one particular case, it was a Mormon. I couldn't do it. And I said, I will be present, but I cannot do it. I have been faced with the same situation when an Armenian married a Jewish gentleman, and another time it was a Jewish lady. I said, I will come. Now, the rabbi would do it, but they do not have the sacrament the way we understand the sacrament. So I said, I will come and offer a prayer, whichever prayer would be appropriate. And I offered two prayers. I could bless the rings, I could bless the wine, or I could offer the final prayer, Bahbanich. Now, in that case, you're going to be faced in, not always. I had a few rabbis who had no objection to me praying even to the Holy Trinity or to Jesus Christ. One rabbi with whom I became good friends said, hey, that's the way you Christians pray. That's fine with me. But others, usually conservative or Orthodox Jews, would let you, but they ask, would you please make no reference to the Trinity? Would you please make no reference to Jesus? I said, Rabbi, and just recently I was faced with this situation. I said, Rabbi, I'm sorry. I didn't ask you what to pray, how to pray. Please don't tell me what to pray, how to pray. I'm coming at the request of the bride and groom or their parents, and they asked me to pray from my tradition, and that's what I intend to do. So you have to be firm and you have to be clear as to what you can do, what you cannot do. You know, if they ask me to do something that is completely out of place, I won't do it. I won't do it. But pastoral presence in cases like this is very important. You want me to be there because you want to feel that the church is not rejecting you. I understand that, and I will do that. That's not a problem. I had one situation where the groom was Jewish, the bride was Armenian, and the Jewish groom was more committed to his faith than the Armenian bride was.
To her faith.
Hmm?
To her faith.
Yes. However, he wanted to raise the kids, their children, their two children. They wanted to raise the children with a faith. And because in the Jewish tradition, the children are supposed to follow their mother's faith, she didn't bring them to church. He brought them to church. And he sat in the congregation for Badarak. And he was a very spiritually aware person. And he
But
Inka Gahaskana, he understood, he made the connections from the text that he was holding in his hand. He made the connection with the Paschal offering and the references in our prayers to the Paschal table. The important thing is that the children, they wanted to baptize. And he was the one who suggested it. He didn't want the kids to grow without faith. and I baptized them without going into detail. It turned out to be a very, very beautiful service, even though it was very spiritually challenging to him because his children are going to be now, baptized a Christian. But he wanted it and he had it. And his wife, because of her Jewish husband, started exploring her Christian faith. So there are many other variations or similar stories. I am just giving you examples. Your approach has to be pastoral. If you come in, my law says, my church says, go up, out, no, can't do it. You have lost them. Okay, let me see. What are you looking for? Yevaila, yes.
May I add one thing onto that? I think it's especially important when you're in a smaller community and there is only one church.
Yeah.
Only one priest. So, where you've said, hey, I can recommend somebody else, for example, when you didn't agree with continuing.
Yeah.
I think it's this understanding, these modifications are especially important when you are the single priest and people, they view that church as their home and there's nowhere else they can go.
You're right. And that's another, handicap that we have. So anyway,
let's say someone.
You said Mormon?
Yeah.
How'd that go?
I just blessed it.
He didn't do a sacrament.
It is. It's just a blessing.
He didn't do a sacrament. He just prayed that God protects them.
Usually Mormons try to convert you and then they get married.
This was not a practicing Mormon.
Okay, that's why, yeah.
Yeah, it was not. He was not a practicing Mormon. So
just on me.
I'm sorry. One last question. I promise this one. This is the last one. I promise I won't ask more. If someone gives you, not you personally, to the priest, huge amount of money. Let's say someone, you talked about commercializing. Let's say someone paid $10,000 for one wedding. And again, there is this conflict where you cannot give communion to the non-believer or someone, groom or bride from a different faith. They're going to say, I paid and you are obligated to deliver that mystery to my spouse.
Those are difficult situations. I understand, but usually, there are circumstances could change. But if a person is a non-believer, I wouldn't give communion.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Yeah. I wouldn't. If I know. If I don't know, obviously, I don't know. But
I'm just curious, Arman, this is Talin. We haven't met. Hi. Is your question about them paying for the ceremony or just a general donation to the church?
Whether it's a donation or whether it's a fee, quote unquote fee for the wedding ceremony, that creates obligation on behalf of the church in terms of that local community to deliver whatever they donated or paid for.
I would say you should let them know the terms and conditions before they make that purchase, quote unquote purchase.
Quote unquote. Right. That's a good one. Yes, Talin. Thank you.
But ahead of time, so no one feels. I mean, that can kind of protect, right? The church, the priest, these are the terms and conditions of what you're about to.
Okay.
Right. But then when you give the conditions, they go away. They don't stay in the church.
That's fine. Also, Sinan said pray for it.
Let's take a 10-minute break and we'll begin. The next one I'm going to move to is the funeral. Now, our traditional funeral service is very clear, and some traditions associated with it for the reasons that are really biblical and long stand in faith communities. That is, the home service, Dangark. The funeral service actually has 3 segments: Dangark, Yegeresvogark, Keresmanigark, and they follow one another without really any break. Don't forget, in the old days, there was no funeral home, there was no refrigeration, and when somebody died, within 24 hours, the funeral had to take place. And when someone died, they called the church. They let the priest know, or the Jamgoch know. Most churches, and in my home parish in Beirut, we had 3 priests. So they let one of them know, and they usually, when I was a young boy, they would call us, give us 50 cents to go up on the roof and ring the bell, tall. Tung, tung, tung. And the whole neighborhood now heard that, and everybody knew somebody has died. So as they're passing by, they ask, Omerab, and we would give the name. I don't know the name, but they would recognize. And they find out. That's,
Belediye gerçekten.
yeah.
Tamam.
Tamam. Hayır. Vomadunal Girtain. So the priest, this is the thing. The priest went to the home of the deceased, where prior to his arrival, either family members or friends or neighbors had already, now this is biblical, and Jesus actually was buried with this ritual, washed and wrapped in white linen and placed in the casket. The priest got there and did the dangak. Then, immediately after the dangak, they proceeded to the church. The procession to the church included a deacon, 2 priests, 2 candle holders, acolytes, and a few others, and they just proceeded there. Once they got into church, service starts immediately. From there to the cemetery, which was maybe about a mile away. In procession, you had to walk, and people carry the casket, and we go. The grave was already dug, they buried, they finished. That's it. Now, here in the United States, there are different circumstances, different approaches. There was a time that Dangark was an indispensable part of the funeral process. The night before the funeral, it was in a funeral home. So the priest went to a funeral home. They have small chapel areas. They place the casket there. So you do the funeral home. Usually a deacon would be available to join the priest.
Imani viewing the sin.
Viewing the sin, the Irish have a better word, wake.
Wake, yeah.
Wake. And then the next day, they came to church. From church directly to the cemetery. By car, because cemeteries are quite a distance. Now, however, things are changing because financial circumstances have changed. Funeral expenses have skyrocketed. Not everybody, truthfully, not everybody can afford a funeral anymore. So to save money forget about Dangark because it costs more. Why does it cost more? Because the funeral home is going to give you a chapel. And he's going to include that expense. Yeah.
In America, they can't do the thing at their own house. They have to take it to a funeral home.
Yep. By law, you cannot.
Oh.
By law, you cannot.
As the Irish do it. You go to their own house.
Hmm?
The Irish,
In America?
maybe sometimes in America.
No. Well, it's not allowed by law.
Right.
It's not allowed by
Kasi
law.
normal yani. At zamanlar gösterelim ki.
Host, dunimej.
Voz dunime spacer
No, maybe before the funeral home comes and picks up the body, they do something, but it has to end up there. Okay. However,
Yes, that's to end up at the funeral.
yeah. Now, at church, a lot of times now, the church is skipped. Why? Because the funeral home is going to take it in the car, go to the church, which is at a completely different direction than the cemetery. So that adds to the expenses. And from there to the cemetery. And then, of course, there is the hokejash. Considering all these circumstances, in recent years, West Coast has developed a very loose, very loose, it almost like whatever the family wants, as long as it's not outrageous, that's what you do. And many, many instances, they don't want either church, they don't want home service, they just want graveside. That's it.
As you lucky get tak posi.
That's it. There's just some. However,
Okay, just in chugun.
Հայաստանցիներուն համար հոգեջաշը ավելի կարևոր է քան թե թաղումը։
But men in chugun.
Հանկուցյալի հոգին համար հաց կփաշնեն. It's like sharing the table of the Lord with the person who is now joined the heavenly table. Այդպիսի բաներ կան. Քրիստոնեական դեսագերով բացատրություն as an explanation. However, the thing is, hokejash, in some social circumstances, like our people from Hayastan who have come to this country, for them, the hokejash is important only because they are going to drink a glass in memory of.
As a punna badaga original.
Well, ador վերածված է, բայց այդ չէ պուննաբադակը, բայց ador վերածված է։ Սակայն,
Even the Irish. thing.
Sagain, the important thing is that we are losing something very important in all of this, where the church is being pushed aside entirely. And the one priest in Los Angeles, now you have another situation where defragged priests or former priests are doing exactly the same thing. They go to the cemetery, they're standing right there in line. Sometimes I have seen bargaining. They bargain. The family bargains with the priest. And they go and do it. How to put an end to it, I don't know, but it is an ugly scene.
It is.
It is an ugly scene. But let's go back to the service. The service is this. Let's assume it's going to be done the way the book recommends. Dangark in the funeral home. In recent years, there have been a wonderful, wonderful new practice. That is, churches have opened their doors for the Dangark service. So they bring the casket to the church. They do the Dangark in the church. The curtain of the main altar closed. The casket standing north to south. And and the priest comes at the appropriate moment. The family or visitors come. Sometimes it's open, sometimes it's closed. and they then take their place. In the middle of it, if it's a 2-hour or 3-hour, whatever, about an hour before, the priest comes out and starts the service. Yes.
That's Dankar? Or
Mhm.
that's just the church service?
No, that's
done
Dankar.
anyways?
Dangat. Liturgically, it's Dangat.
Okay, we call something desaksutyun.
That's
Yeah, desaksutyun bize. Hayır.
Which one's that? Dankar?
Եկեղեցվա։
No, viewing. Desaksutyun, huh?
Is
Dankar
it Եկեղեցվոքար?
Մեր մենք Ղևոնդյանց մարդաճար եկեղեցվո գար կնենք, բայց ժողովուրդը գիտի ադիգա որպես դեսակցություն կամ ուղարկավորություն։
Adi hachort ne?
Yeah,
Uğargalı.
խալանուններ թրած են։
Yete irigunu gnen adiga.
Այո,
Hachortor inç gnen.
աղում,
Uğargi kerezman gertan. Aransi geretse.
նո եկեղեցի գնեն ընդհանրապես դեսակցությունը եկեղեցվո գարկը գլա հետո քերեսման գերտան։ Բայց երբեմն իրգունը գնեն եւ հաջորդ օրը գերեւի քերեսման գերտան։
Hasketsa inç gnen gor. They're skipping.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, they're skipping something. No. That's a new one now. That's a new variation of the same thing. But ideally, this is what I think we should encourage as much as possible, with some possible exceptions in certain circumstances. The night before the funeral in church, curtain closed, the casket standing, the head on the achagomiantas, the feet on the tsahagomiantas. Hours are designated usually in the announcement. They say, 7 to 9 or 8 to 9, whatever it is. 45 minutes or so before the end time, the priest comes out with the deacon, and if there are others also, and start the service. Dangat exactly as it is in the Mashtots. Okay? Hadja, there's Ainosig, and so on. And then the funeral director usually is there. After it's over, everybody leaves, you turn the casket. It was like this, you turn the casket. The next morning, open the curtain, usually a candle here and a candle here.
So the body stays in the church that
The
night,
body stays in the church overnight.
and then when the next day you do Եկեղեցվոքար?
That's correct. You get it through that? Ընդհանրապես այո այդպես է. Ընդհանրապես. Okay, and then they go to the cemetery. So, and at the cemetery. Now, here are a couple of things, issues that you should be aware of. The funeral service in the Mashtots has hymn after hymn, sometimes long songs and whatever. The one that we are working on now has edited it with clear rubrics as to what to do, how to do, who is going to do it, and so on. That's very important. We're working on that. Okay? Aye. Ignore. I got included in Now, and of course, it is important, especially funeral, that the prayers be done in a language people understand. Ashkarapar or Krapar or English. Krapar, nobody understands. So the new version is going to have the Krapar text, but it's going to also have definitely a good translation of Ashkarapar text and a good translation of the English text. Okay? And that's important. And it's going to be parallel, hopefully. I don't have the design responsibility, but hopefully it will be designed in such that will be user-friendly and unconfusing. with some options also for readings. Okay, different options, different locations, different options. You could choose one or the other. The issue of eulogy. Usually the priest is going to give a eulogy. But very often I have seen priests give eulogy. If they know the person, it becomes so personal. He did this, he did that. Well, I think funeral homilies should be to bring the comfort of our faith to those who are grieving a loss. That is the purpose of eulogy. Very often we miss that. I have heard homilies where the priest is so attached to the text, he goes and he just keeps reading, and everybody is detached. He just doesn't have any eye contact with the people. It just doesn't make sense to me. Now, in that case, I did this in Fresno. It used to work. It may not work everywhere at all times. You have to be conscious of that. I do offer a general few thoughts regarding our faith, Christ's own teaching, the church's teaching about life in this world, life in the eternal world, and so on. Then invite, pre-agreed, a member of the family to share their thoughts. That is a process of allowing the family to grieve. It's a very important process. But it also comes with a danger. A few years back, in the Eastern Diocese, a directive came from the bishop that no layperson should be allowed to speak under any circumstances in the church. Then we found out, because when the family was asked to have a family member say something, they asked a partisan member, like Ramgavar in this case, because the deceased was a member of the Ramgavar party. A local party committee chairman got up and started giving a political speech. Well, that's inappropriate. In Fresno, I allowed a family member to say something. Usually, a child or a brother or a sister, a family member would get up, just share some memories and so on. It is a part of the process of closure. Okay? You say a few words and then you invite, they say it. And then it is important also to establish an accepted custom of leading the casket in and leading the casket out whenever appropriate. Pallbearers, make sure that the family knows that there are pallbearers. Usually the funeral director works at that, but you have to care. The funeral service itself is quite simple, even though in our present books you have a few hymns. Usually, however, the practice has been almost everywhere. One badger of Hankstian Sharagan, one badger of Aspazazni, and one badger of Hachi. Okay? Hachi Sharagan. Mek yerbu yerek badger. Yev arakal gerkes. Okay? Iveranal hinena vurtsi moster, oknya insmiyan martaster. Yev aydan. Rüşaruna geç. if you look into the mashtots, there are about 9 badgers, too much. Okay. I have brought this to your attention. The songs of Nerse Shnorhali from Astvadaner are really wonderful to be sung in Armenian, in Ashkarapar. Okay, you know Astvazaner, che? Astvazaner anjamanag hayramız kisnevan kanag. Yerisha Turian's translation. Astvazan stez anjamanag hayranız kispuan kanag. Bortmuzmentian estu badjar usur potmun pahmananjar. Kezgaçek yergaynamid amen oğur muceshmalit aystezvazit kıtasirov vorhui sıvrat nınçez anhrov. Şatkeretsik. Okay? This is going to be included in the new mashtos in Ashkarapar form and in New English translation. But the important thing is you have to be courageous enough, and you have to also prepare yourself, practice beforehand, be familiar with it, and then do it. Don't forget, funerals especially, almost any sacrament, but especially funerals are moments when people's heart is more open to what God has to say to them at that moment. It's because funeral is the moment when we feel powerless. At other times, you might still feel powerful. I don't need God. At funeral, that's all you need. God. Nobody else can do anything. Nobody else can help anything. So you have to do whatever is necessary to make that moment a moment where the family is going to be open to hear the word of God. Now, from there, again, some people leave out the casket, some don't, but it is suggestible that you lead out. Everybody gets in their car, you get into your car, you go to the cemetery. At the cemetery, now here is another one. Do you lead the casket to the grave, or do you go to the grave and wait for them to bring it? It really doesn't matter as long as you end up in the same place. And you have to be aware and conscious of what you need to do. There is a hymn there, okay? There are a couple of versions of that. Depending on your circumstances, you could sing either one of the versions. The Zaner. That Zaner. There is also Hortor. Whichever is appropriate, either one is acceptable, it doesn't matter. So you could do that. And then at the cemetery, now, there are some situations where you have to be very conscious of. If it's in the dead of winter, you have to be conscious that people are going to be standing in freezing cold. So you have to do whatever is absolutely necessary. And sometimes in the middle of hot summer, the sun is just burning everybody. You have to be conscious of that. When the flexible, if the situation permits to do the whole thing or in detail, that's fine. If not, be flexible enough to change. But what can you change or what can you omit? What you cannot omit is important. You shouldn't omit, for example, the sealing of the grave. That has to be done. The apostolic reading,
Yes.
the reading from the apostles, you could skip. Nobody's going to listen to that cold weather. Okay? The effectiveness of what you're doing. Avedarana, I suggest that you do, even if it is only a sentence or two. Okay? Now,
Most are actually lovely and meaningful for the moment.
yeah. Then there is, of course, this question of lowering the casket and covering the grave. In America, it is an emotional moment to lower the casket while the family is there. Some families don't want to see that, don't want to experience that. So you can. It is up to you if you want to wait until everybody goes and they lower the casket. You see it with your own eyes. A lot of times I have done this. I have asked a family member to stay and make sure that they lower the casket and then cover it. They insisted on covering themselves. I accommodated that. I wouldn't object to that. That is their tradition. It's a closure that they bring. That's fine. That's how they used to do it in the Middle East as well. They covered it immediately on the spot. So these are the things. Yine keresman çayınkar. Yeah.
So how come
Yeah, my martı yertayım.
when people, especially like family members, are putting some soil
Oh,
on the casket?
right.
Can you explain why that's, or if there's any
It's
reason? And
helping,
then,
helping cover. It's a
okay,
symbolic closure.
because I've seen also certain, like
Yeah.
women not allowed to do it and then allowed to do it.
Yeah.
Very,
They usually say, oh, tetevka.
I was
Yeah, but
told not to do it and then I insisted and I did it anyway.
Where?
I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not
Where?
told not to.
Can I mention one thing that
Where?
it's from state to state?
Mhm.
State
For
law
family
also. Sometimes,
Yeah, that's a
Like
good
in
point.
New Jersey, nobody's allowed to be present. Technically,
Nobody is allowed what?
to be present when the casket.
Yeah.
Well, in Pennsylvania too. What happened is in Pennsylvania, there were a couple of accidents.
Only the funeral director and the.
Or a family member, usually they recommended somebody.
Right.
What happened is in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania, not in Philadelphia, but in central Pennsylvania, at a funeral was a tragic death of a young man and I think a relative, a close relative, a cousin or sister or something. I don't know. I don't remember all the details. Threw herself in. Okay, and got
Yourself on the
yeah,
on the casket?
yeah.
Oh, jeez.
After it was lowered,
Yeah.
and you know they bulldozer was covering it. I mean, they saved. They got her out, but it was that, and I think a few similar, not one incident, but a few similar, and then went to the legislature and they passed it that it has to be done privately after everybody leaves. From the perspective of the church service, we prefer to lower it, to cover it, and then we have the ceiling. But it's not possible all the time because of state laws.
I took Kahanan Gamana Chaminchev, there's covered it with
Sometimes, but always.
wouldn't you seal it?
I would seal it after it's lowered,
Yeah.
not covered. Because in the Karasun, you're going to go back to the cemetery anyway. And it's the same sealing that you're going to do at the Karasun. But again, these things all depend on the circumstances and on the family's mood, expectations, and so on. If they're from Hayastan, you do it, no matter what. I have been to, in Fresno, to quite a few. The only thing that we discussed it a little bit the other day. In Los Angeles, they're still doing it. In Fresno, I discouraged it, and I think they have stopped doing it. They bring a duduk player who plays sad music to make them cry, to make people cry.
It's up to the family. Ուրեմն, ասի դեր դարբեր բաներ կստեղծեն, դարբեր սովորություններ կստեղծեն։ Եվ հետո նույնությունը չմնա։
Չէ, արարողությունը նույնը կմնա։ Կոչելու, քերեզմանը կոչելու, ծածկելու եւ այլնի բարակային գսեմ, որ Պենսիլվանիայի մեջ այդ օրենքը չի կա, օրենքը կա, որ չես կրնար, բայց Կալիֆոռնիա չի կա։
Այսինքն չես կրնար գենալ։
No, չես կրնար կոչել, գրնաս գենալ։
Այո, չես կրնար կոչել։
You didn't get like.
Թակաղ գիչեցնեն եւ գմնա։
Թակաղը գիչեցնես, ամեն մարդ կերտա, հետո կկոչեն։
Այո։
So եթե գուզես գենալ, գրնաս գենալ։ Ադորակել չի գա, բայց Կալիֆոռնիա չես կրնար իջեց ծածկել, երբ որ ընտանիքը հոնեն։ Կալիֆոռնիա ադիգա չի գա։ Կալիֆոռնիա իրենք ընտանիքը գուզեն թակաղը կոչել, and psychologically that is a very acceptable way of bringing closure to the reality of death. There is no question, no question.
Interesant ճիշտ է, այսինքն ընտանիքը անհանգիստ է ինչքան ժամանակ թաղումը չէ։
Այո,
Եվ թաղումը լայես նկատած եմ, որոշ հանգստություն կա։
այո, այո։
That everything is done and finished.
Yeah. So in Fresno we did that, and many families were happy. But Hokejash has become another issue. There is a special prayer for Hokejash blessing in the mashtos, and we should really. There is already some effort to bring that back instead of just Jashages to and I think that's commendable and encourageable. But we have to be conscious of extremism in Hokejash. Really extremism. First of all, Hayastantis insist there has to be vodka. And they bring bottle and bottle and bottle of vodka.
They outdo each other.
Yeah. So Hokejash is not about food or drink, and that tradition, by the way, varies from place to place. In Istanbul, they don't have Hokejash. Just on the way out from the cemetery, the family usually has made arrangements to have simit helva. What is the significance of simit helva and funeral? I have no idea. But in Istanbul, there is no funeral without simit helva.
What is that?
I mean, Hokejash.
Oh, yeah.
Hokejash simit helva. In Jerusalem, there is no simit helva or anything. There is what they call Hokesurj. They go and have a cup of coffee, demitas coffee, but without the saucer. What's the reason? What's the explanation? I lived in Jerusalem. I grew up in Jerusalem. I saw this hundreds of times. And I have asked it 200 times. Nobody was able to explain why they don't hook saucer.
Որբեսի, եթե ադի տնես ծևոմը հրամցնելի վիզիտայի ծև գարնի, ասի վիզիտա չէ, if you want an explanation.
We can just go on the line.
In any event,
I think Hockey came about because from different villages, villagers used to go to the village where this happened. Երբեմն հերույ է, ուրեմն մարդոց պետք է հրավիրեն բանը։
now, in the book, there is what they call Aikuts. That is the next morning. In my younger years in Jerusalem, that was kept very faithfully because the cemetery was in the monastery. So, and no matter what day of the week the funeral was, the next 3 days, not one day, 3 days, every morning, we would go to the cemetery and bless the cemetery. Aikuts.
Ամեն երթալուն քիչ հոգավերցնեն։
Չէ, արդեն ծածկված է։ Պարզապես կաղոթեն եւ կգնքեն։ 3 անգամ, 3 օր բրավրայի կգնքեն։ And then Yotnor. In Jerusalem, this was very, and I remember also in Beirut. Yotnor is not really seventh day. It is Saturday. If the funeral was on Friday, the next day is Yotnor. Why? Because Saturday is the seventh day of the week. And Saturday liturgically is dedicated to praying for the dead. Jamerkutun, Giraknuti Jamerkutun, includes prayers for the dead. They used to go to church. From church, they would go to the cemetery. And usually, as you approach the cemetery in Beirut, there were people who were selling charcoal and incense. You would buy, you would take it there. And many people had hungaman with them. So they would take the charcoal, light it, and put the hung on the grave. Usually also there were assigned priests. You know, every 2 or 3 priests were assigned every Saturday to go to the cemetery to accommodate the blessing of graves when these people came. These are nice traditions, and I think they are liturgically sound, theologically sound. If we can keep them, we should keep them. Hayastansis are quite faithful in the Yotnor and Karasung and Darelitz. Unfortunately, though, they don't know why. They just follow blindly to what Hayastansis do without being open to the explanation or understanding why we do what we do. Okay? Now, in the Mashtots, there is all that, and then there is the same thing. Aikuts for Drayatar, young person's funeral. Aikuts for young person's funeral, Karasung and Darelitz and everything else. Okay? Now, in the Mashtots also, we have some wonderful prayers. In the Mair Mashtots, there is more, but some select ones here. Chachalava Arnelu. This is comforting the cross. Chachalava, they usually blessed with the cross, and people drank the water. It is intended for healing. Okay? Here we don't have that any saints' relics, except now maybe a couple of churches I know have relics from their Zor of the martyrs of the genocide. But in the Middle East, there are churches who do have saints' relics, and they bless the water with the saints' relic, and people drink it. And sometimes, they take it home to someone who is sick to drink. Hachahankist or Hachalavar. It's a nice service. I think the cathedral tried to revive it a little bit. They're still doing it once in a while. I did it in Fresno once in a while. It is very well received. Then it has Trijvarazin Hariganoch, a woman, a pregnant woman who is having difficulty in delivering. And I have translated that prayer, and I have used it a few times with some modification. In fact, you could use that prayer for any delivery, not necessarily, a difficulty in delivery. Why not? A safe delivery. And then there's Aisaharatsia Lusnodits. This is like the exorcism, okay? Aisaharatsia Lusnodits. A lot of times, when I say there is a prayer like this, I've had an opportunity. People usually chuckle a little bit, like, come on, do you believe in stuff like that? But you know what? A lot of times it doesn't matter what I believe. It matters what the person believes. I had a situation, one that I remember in my memory. There probably are others that didn't register in my memory as this one did. There was a young man who had some developmental issues. And he always was in conflict with his father. One day, he didn't live too far from the church. One day he came to church with a knife in his hand, big knife, butcher's knife. The father was ahead of him. The father came in first, and then he came. He actually wants to kill his father. He came into the office. The father was scared. I talked to the kid. He listened to me. And then, but he still has the knife in his hand. He's not doing anything. The father is sitting over there. I said, would you like to go to the church and we will pray and ask for God to help us? I didn't say to help you. He said to help us. He said, yeah. We went to the church. Both of us knelt in front of the altar. I prayed. He put the knife down as I am praying. He himself did. I didn't say anything. He himself put the knife down. And he got up and walked away. The knife is still there by itself. Later on, I went and picked it up. But we went into the office. The father was there. He just embraced his father. He says, I'm sorry, Dad, let's go home. He believed that he was possessed by the devil, made him do what he was doing. And what I did, it helped him sort of fight his own devils. What our forefathers had here is exactly similar.
Mm.
Okay. I had one person in Fresno, this was, where he came and he said, I don't know if you have heard this term, Bügabel. They used to tie an evil wish on a person, like they bound the person.
It's like tuktukir.
Huh?
It's like tuktukir.
Yeah, exactly. And in that particular case, I knew that in the book of Saint Cyprian, Gibrianos, there is a special prayer, Charach Giten. Okay? I took that book out, I read it, perfect. It worked. It may not work all the time, but these are the things that whether I believe or you believe doesn't matter. What does the person who is affected at that moment, how is it going to affect that person? That's what you got to do. You got to connect with that situation. So there is that service hour just for our purposes now. it is here. And then there is Sagi եւ mazma օշնելու. Աղոտ, Sagi եւ mazma օշնելու. Chalice. Skest օշնելու, եկեղեցվո skest օշնելու. Any vestment. Any vestment. Shabi, priest's vestments, deacon's vestments, urak, whatever. Even, I would say, altar covers. Chum օշնելու. Nor kirk orshnelo. You buy new books you're going to use in the church, you have a blessing. Ag orshnelo. Ag gorsnein yev gentaniin gegertsinein. Madag orshnelo. Cherhor orshnelo. Zarmadis orshnelo. Prop.
Oh. Not a word.
Yerashti, when you have a drought. I did that in Fresno again. When I was there, we had a drought of 4 years. Farmers were hurting. And I made an announcement. Everybody came to church. It was a hot day. We prayed. I had translated that prayer. We prayed. We came out of the church. It's raining. Really. Now, there is something here you have to be careful of. We're calling this first haircut, and indeed it is, but different than what we understand now. First haircut, in the younger days, they used to let the hair grow. That's why we have, for teenagers, what's the Armenian word? Badani. Arshen Aivazian has an explanation. He is covered with hair, badani. And then, after it's cut, he becomes like in late teens. They call him Gudrich, Gudrvats. That's his explanation. It makes sense. But that's the haircut we're talking about. Yet in Jerusalem or in the Middle East in general, there is this tradition that you make a vow, uchtgenis, for whatever reason. Somebody is, saved from an accident, from death, and they make a vow. I gave you the example the other day of a young man who was saved from death in a car accident. And he vowed, this was from Baghdad, he made the vow that he is going to let his hair grow and then come to Jerusalem, have a haircut, and he's going to put his hair on one side of the goldsmith's scale, which is extremely sensitive, and 5 dinar paper currency on the other, and he would donate it to the church. So there are all kinds of, there are some parents, the child experiences a serious illness, they make a vow that if the child is treated and makes it well, they're going to make a donation and let the hair grow, and then they will cut it and so on. But I have used that on other occasions too. Here in this country especially, there are some families who would like to have that kind of a experience for their teenagers. Teenage years in this country, in our society, are very important. And sometimes I had one parent says, do we have something like the bar mitzvah? Well, no, we don't have anything but bar mitzvah. But I said, you know what? We have this hair cutting service. Oh, yeah, I would like. We did it. Kid liked it. You know what they like mostly? To be in the spotlight.
Attention.
Yeah. So why not? Nobody was harmed. This is not a sacrament. Okay. So we did.
As long as they don't get mohawks.
Okay. So you have all these possibilities. Now, in our present circumstances, I must say, we have new circumstances, new situations. we have to consider. Blessing of a car.
Mm.
You don't bless the car, you bless a cross and give to the person, the owner, to hang it in the car. Or blessing of a business. Somebody opens a business, no matter what the business is. Just like home blessing, you just have to adapt some of the prayers and it works. There are other circumstances, whatever the circumstance might be. There is no reason why we cannot. I mentioned it the other day. I am all in favor of blessing pets, house pets.
Mhm.
Why not?
Blessing chickens.
Yeah, we have blessing the chicken.
We can't bless the oracles.
Okay.
You should especially bless them. Mexican too.
Inshallah.
Nothing. A joke from the board.
Uh, there are other situations as well, but we have to be open to the possibility of enriching our liturgical experience by connecting these liturgical settings, prayers, to our life circumstances. That's the key. Our foreparents were, why would they bless farm tools? Because people were farms and it connected the church, the faith, to the person and the person's profession, the person's livelihood. We could do the same. Okay? I think I'm done.
Well,
I really like that.
thank you so much, brother.